Okay, so this is Précis of Wild Animal Ethics by Kyle Johannsen, and this is in philosophy. Cool. And feel free to ask questions along the way. I don't have any idea what this is, but this is Kyle Johannsen's book. Johannsen, I'm sorry. I apologize for how I say your name and everyone else's name. Kyle Johannsen, Wild Animal Ethics. The purpose of my book, Wild Animal Ethics, Way, is to defend a deontological and yet interventionist approach to the problem of wild animal suffering. Though consequentialists have tended to be sympathetic to intervention, deontologists have tended to argue against a duty to intervene. They've argued that the special relationship we have with domesticated animals is absent in the case of wild animals, that intervention is impermissibly paternalistic, and that intervention is too demanding. Though any deontological approach should take these concerns seriously, I argue that neither they nor the other concerns I address in my book undermine the claim that we owe a collective duty to research and eventually provide large-scale humanitarian assistance to wild animals. Oh, I'm sorry. What the fuck? Why? There we go. My apologies. Yeah. So. Pro streamer. Okay, this was just the introductory paragraph. Basically, you heard what I said. The author here is defending that we need to actually get our hands dirty and help out animals here. And they're saying that most deontologists do not agree. The above description perhaps makes Way, the book, Wild Animal Ethics, sound like it's about the ethics of conventional disaster relief. For example, the ethics of assisting animals after forest fires or hurricanes. However, the sort of assistance I envision goes far beyond what's conventional. Stable, functioning ecosystems contain astronomical amounts of suffering, and the natural processes that cause this suffering shouldn't be taken for granted. Considerations of beneficence strongly support intervening in those processes so long as we've done the research necessary to make intervention safe and effective. Okay, now I think this person's nuts. You think you're going to make the Garden of Eden? Like, what? Do you actually think you have any idea what's going on in nature? The idea that we have an idea about how to prevent suffering, when have humans ever shown that we have any idea how to actually prevent suffering? Yeah, what the fuck is so long as we've done the research to make intervention safe and effective? I have no effing clue what that is. The best we usually do is, reduce harm that we've made ourselves. So, but okay. But yeah, so this is like my doubt face. Like, what do you actually think we can possibly do to change nature in some way? But okay, that's what they're saying. I think they're nuts. But let's find out. Consider the prime... Yeah, exactly, Shane. I'm with you. Like, this is... Have you... And don't take my word for it. Take the historian's word for it. Shane is saying, anytime we've tried to fix one thing, we've killed something else. That is how humans are. We do not do a good job at fixing shit. We just don't. I mean, if you need to look past any time in history, if you have to look more than 3 days into the past to find us fucking something up like this, you're not looking hard enough. Yeah. Megalomorph, welcome and how you doing? Just because we choose not to prevent the suffering of others does not mean we don't know how to do it. We may simply lack the resources or the desire to spend them on others. Megalomorph, I think that's optimistic. I think we don't quite grasp what it is to actually help a lot of other stuff, because in the past when we've tried to help things, we a lot of times do a lot more damage than we mean to. Shane says humans are the most invasive species in the history of the planet. The idea of noble savage living in harmony with the land is hot fucking garbage. We murder shit. Yeah, like just because we choose not to prevent the suffering of others doesn't mean we don't know how to do it. No, I think that's exactly the problem. We don't know how to do it, and yes, because we haven't actually we choose to not prevent the suffering of others. I think it says nothing about what we know how to do. So it's like I really don't think we have a very good idea of we know what we do is bad. We have to cut back on what we do, and then everything else can hopefully repair itself. That is usually what we need to get our act together on. The idea that we're going to go out there and fix stuff, the world is, here's really my position. The world is way more complicated than what our science can capture. It's not that we don't learn stuff in science. We do. It's just the world is like really, 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 really complicated. And the idea that with what our limited knowledge, we're going to go out there and fix stuff is unrealistic in terms of what are the capabilities of our sciences. And it's not a mere question about resources or desire to spend resources on others. It's that we really don't even have an understanding of the world well enough. And so it's like you could throw more resources at us, but I don't even know if that's a question, like if that's in question here. Like, it's nice to think that if we had infinite money and time at the moment, we could figure out how to help the world. Maybe, but like that's optimistic to me. Juggling Biohazard says, if we really want to be altruistic, then humans should not exist. We should have seen the difference during COVID with people indoors, how animals start to inhabit areas we normally occupy. We treat other humans terribly, and our evil nature is foreshadowed in how we treat AI, partially sentient. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're straight up evil, but like, this is the thing. If we could leave the rest of the earth alone, it would be a lot better for everybody else, all the rest of the earth, than us. Now, the question is nature worse than us? I don't know, but it's presumptuous to and the author said that we shouldn't automatically assume that nature is meaner or not as mean as we are. Like they said up here that it's like we shouldn't be where is it? I don't know if they said it, but like we can't really assume that nature is nicer or worse than us. So it's like we have to we have to tone back our position, because we have to say, well, is nature worse or are we worse? Now nature is red in tooth and claw, but is it compared to us? That may be a bad way of viewing things. So alright, so let's find out what the author has to say instead of me ranting about them. Alright, consider the primary source of wild animal suffering, the R strategy. No idea what that is. Unlike the K strategy animals, who protect their genes by having few offspring and devoting considerable energy to each individual, R strategist animals do the opposite. They protect their genes by producing many offspring but devoting little energy to each individual. Okay, so they're talking about basically different strategies of evolutionary strategies. Have lots of children, or just have a few and protect them, or have lots and say good luck, but there's a lot of you, so some of you will survive. Megalomorph says current AI is nowhere close to partially sentient. I'm not even convinced the average voter is partially sentient. I'm with you on that, Megalomorph, but that doesn't change the fact that how should we treat things where we are not even sure about sentience, animal ethics. You don't need to go with AI. We do try to treat our pets better, and things that we think are the great apes and things like chimpanzees. We do try to treat them better, but we treat them pretty badly just the same. So it's we should be treating them better, and we don't. So yeah, that's the question. Even though it's AI, it's the old thing from Terminator 2. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember Terminator. Oh yeah, it's Terminator 2. I was thinking Terminator 1, but no, it is Terminator 1. It is the Terminator, where Sarah Connor says, "Hey, machines need love too." You don't see a lot of Peter rallies to save earthworms or beetles. Yeah, so it's things like that. Insects are not dumb things. They found out that bees can count. They can count bees. And so it's we're not exactly sure where sentience lies and how you can't assume the bugs don't even understand shit. So it's just because the AI may not be very sentient, we have to be sort of careful about sentient. Yeah, what was it? I mean, they were hypothesizing that squirrels have theory of mind. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we're gonna have my own future with hookers and blackjack, but I mean, squirrels have a theory of mind because they found out a few years ago that squirrels will fake hide their nuts if they think another squirrel is watching them. So they will fake hide their nuts up to 5 times if they think another squirrel is like spying on where they're hiding their nuts. Now they won't fake hide their nuts if like there's other things around like humans. They don't care about us stealing their nuts. They don't think that we are going to steal their nuts, but they do think other squirrels will steal their nuts and will fake hide their nuts. Like they'll pretend to hide them and then like try to run off before the other squirrel realizes that they didn't actually hide their nuts. So it's like, do squirrels have a theory of mind? Do they understand that like squirrel minds exists other than their own? I don't know. Maybe they do, but it looks like that. Yes, it is megalomorph. So, and I just like saying squirrel nuts. So I like the story. But okay. But it's the thing, like we have to be a little bit more, humble about where we are attributing, sentience. We can't just say like, oh, it's us and like the great apes or whatever and like some monkeys. You have to be careful. Because other things that's turning out when we study them more, we find out they know shit. That happens. Alright, so now we're talking about things that have a lot of children and a lot of offspring and, just like let them go into the world. And so, though some R strategist offspring manage to reach adulthood and reproduce, most die during infancy. What's more, the causes they die from are terribly painful: predation, starvation, exposure, disease, etc. Since A, the R strategy is common among many types of animals, for example, fish, lizards, amphibians, and mammals. B, R strategists have higher birth rates than K strategists. And C, most R strategists die during infancy. It follows that the lives of R strategist infants are representative of life in the wild. Since the lives of R strategist infants are quite terrible, the life of a typical wild animal is quite terrible too. I mean, this seems very, very, what's it called? Consequentialist. They're adding up all the little infants and all their suffering to say most of the life in a typical wild animal's life is terrible because of all of these like infants that are dying very quickly. I mean, is this really like this? I always find this fascinating, like as a philosophical strategy that gets used by deontologists. I always find it so interesting that deontologists always appeal to this sort of like consequentialist strategy of like, look how terrible things are. There's all this suffering in the world, and they're adding it up like a consequentialist. So this person is making a consequentialist argument here, but then they're going to argue that a deontologist has to worry about this, which is, I find that very strange, but it happens a lot, and I just don't know why. Like they're saying we're adding up all the baby animals. All the baby animals are dying, and that's bad because there's a lot of them, and that makes it like most things are just having a bad time because they're dead baby animals. Yeah, I got that, but like, where's your principles here, man? As far as deontology goes, if you're adding up suffering, you're a consequentialist. Okay. One of the most striking features of wild animal suffering is the sheer scale of the problem. Exactly, you're adding crap up. Sheer scale of the problem. To see this, compare wild animal suffering to global poverty and animal agriculture. Global poverty is a very large problem. By the end of 2021, a significant portion of the world's human population, between 730.9 and 751.5 million people, are expected to be living on less than $1.90 per day. Animal agriculture is bigger yet. It's responsible for the slaughter of at least 70 billion terrestrial animals each year. Wild animal suffering, however, is considerably larger than either of these problems, since the life of a typical wild animal is quite terrible, and since wild animals are incredibly numerous. According to one estimate, the world's population of wild terrestrial vertebrates is about 1 trillion, a number which only represents the wild terrestrial vertebrates alive at any given moment. Were we to include in our own country the many R strategist infants who die over a few year period, were we to include the world's population of wild birds, invertebrates, and marine vertebrates, our number would be orders of magnitude higher. Yeah, vertebrates only. This really is sounding to me more and more like these anti-abortion arguments. It's like, oh my God, look at all the dead babies. Yeah, no, this is the problem. This is sounding more like look at all the cute dead baby arguments to me, which I don't particularly like, and it seems just very odd to do that. This is basically an appeal to look at the dead babies argument, like look at the cute things and they're dying, oh my God, and the otter doing cute little things with its hands, and there's so many of them dying, oh no. It's like appeal to emotion, like you understand how many fucking philosophy papers I've read, you understand how many like arguments I've analyzed. I don't care about your appeal to like emotion. I don't care. I've seen every argument. You know what was interesting? I saw an argument I had never seen before, and I remember the last time this happened. It was years ago, and I saw one researching the history of probability a few weeks back, and I was like, oh my God, the ancient Greeks treated things, if they were exactly equal, as unreal, and we treat probability as real. And so you can have something that has a perfect flip 50-50 split nowadays. The ancient Greeks would have treated that as unreal. I'm with the ancient Greeks. If it's a perfect 50-50 split, it's metaphysical. It's not real. We only approximate a perfect 50-50 with like a coin flip. But like there's something very, very old and ancient in that, and like it's actually, I'm with the ancient Greeks. They had a point, and but like that was like, I'm all excited about this. I found a new argument I haven't seen in like, I haven't seen it like, what was it? I mean, like we're talking like it's been a decade since I've seen a new argument. Like it's all the same shit to me. It's like, this is how I run through papers. I've seen, like, the particulars are different, but I've seen every fucking argument structure, like, all of them. Schrodinger's cat. The argument for Schrodinger's cat of being alive and dead. Yeah, I mean, the structure of that argument I've seen. I mean, the idea of using probability in that way to bring alive and dead. I mean, yeah, I guess that would be very similar. No. Yeah, but their metaphysical notion of real, it wasn't alive and dead. It was like it didn't exist. It couldn't exist in reality. So it couldn't exist. Now we treat Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, it's actually, you're right. It is very similar to Schrodinger's argument, because Schrodinger was trying to reductio the understanding. Yeah, I think you got it. You hit the nail on the head, Shane. Because Schrodinger was trying to use reductio the idea that you could be in a quantum superposition, because the idea would be you can't actually have a cat that would be alive and dead like this. And then of course it took a life of its own. It's like, oh well, Schrodinger's cat is both alive and dead. Well, Schrodinger was trying to say this can't be the case. Okay, Megalomorph says we have no way of knowing if a coin would actually flip to exactly 50. No matter how many rolls we do, can only get an approximation. Yeah, and so, but like the notion of the non-existence was very strong in the ancient world. So anything that was even, if anything that was anything was perfectly equal, I think the argument goes it couldn't exist. And so I was researching the history of probability when they were talking about, so they were talking about equal probabilities. But I think they said anything, two things that were perfectly identical couldn't exist. And that is also something like in it's only metaphysical. You can't have two things in the same place at the same time, because it would just be the one thing at that point. So yeah, but like the idea that like the very strong argument there I had not seen. I'm annoyed. I can't remember my last time I found an argument. The one before this. It must have been a decade ago. Okay. Yeah, so This is just making me giggle at this point. Although huge in scale, wild animal suffering is a very neglected issue. This might seem like an odd claim given the considerable level of interest in environmental matters, such as protecting natural ecosystems and natural habitat, but a concern for wild animals' well-being is different from either of these. As we noted above, naturogenic harms are responsible for a tremendous amount of suffering, and the life of a typical wild animal is consequently pretty terrible. Indeed, since some natural processes are quite harmful, concern for wild animals' well-being obliges us to intervene in nature. I mean, this is a very interesting take on nature that, like, everything is terrible. We don't actually know how animals feel about their lives and stuff. And so the idea that all the dead babies out there are making the overall lives of wild animals terrible is very consequentialist of this person. But, like, also sort of, like, it seems like it's well beyond what we actually know. But, yeah. But, okay. It's funny. Like, I can see why someone would believe this. I mean, me being me and just sort of, like, scoffing at this is not, like, a serious thing. Serious people probably, like, I can see why this person wrote the book. It's not a bad fucking thing to talk about. Why would it be? Like, a lot of animals die. Like, I see, like, sometimes you see, like, baby birds fell out of the nest. They're dead. That probably was a terrible last few seconds for that bird. I mean, so a lot of shit sucks, but, like, I can see why people would be, oh my god, the baby animals, and that's what this author is playing up on. Okay, in the book's first chapter, I critique what I call the positive view of nature. This view, the view that nature is good, is comprised of at least two claims: that wild animals tend to live good lives, I am not claiming that, and B, that naturalness is a valuable property. I've already explained why A is false, but B is another matter. That's true, like, we might not want to intervene in, like, evolution for some reason. Naturalness can be predicated of many things, for example, consumer products, spaces like wild areas, and motives. To say that naturalness is valuable is to say, in some sense, that it confers goodness. However, it certainly isn't true that naturalness is necessary for goodness. Many artificial things are good, after all, great works of art, synthetic but life-saving medicines, etc. Nor is it true that naturalness is sufficient for goodness. Many natural things such as disease, parasitism, hunger, etc. are not good. How can a wild animal's life be measured as good or bad? Well, this is what I was really getting at with all my saying this person's acting very consequentialist here. I have no fucking clue what this person means by good or bad. They're just assuming that dying in childbirth is bad, basically. And I can see why someone would, people would say, all right, yeah, dying in childbirth is bad. Like, that's what I was saying about the, you see like a dead baby. Like, I saw, I'm in New York, so you see like sometimes dead rats around, or like a baby rat. Like, yeah, I see them every so often, and it's like, do I think that rat had a good life? No, but can I measure that shit? Fuck, I have no idea. Yeah. So, yeah, and so this is the sort of thing. They're also saying, look, all these things we experience out are bad, like disease, parasitism, and hunger. Those are not good. And I am inclined to agree with this. Like, no one wants to have a parasite in them. Like, basically something that's like doing bad things to them. Nothing wants to be hungry. That's fair. Juggling Biohazard says, saying we're obliged to intervene is an indication that the writer has removed himself as an animal too. From time to time you'll see cute videos of animals helping out another, but largely they're just selfish as we are. Yeah, it's true, but that's part of the author's job, is to say, I understand the truth and this is what you're doing. I mean, it's part of like ethics writing, so yeah, that's 100% the case. But like, I mean, it's also like being a philosopher, you end up being pretentious sometimes is just a job hazard as a philosopher, that you are going to be telling people what to do, especially in ethics. And yeah, so that's exactly right, juggling, but it's like, comes with the territory. Shane says, I think that this person is selectively using good, bad to mean natural, unnatural, only when it makes sense to the argument. Yeah, no, I completely agree that this is, the appeal above was, oh, look at the baby animals. But that's not a, that's not a methodological appeal. That's a rhetorical appeal. And this is, again, all of this seems like they're, picking and choosing what they want to get their point across. But like again, this is only describing their book. Maybe they have like slightly more detailed arguments in their book, but again, this is not impressing me at the moment with this argument. Yeah. So let's just see what this person says. Though it might seem that all things being equal, naturalness at least increases value. That is, that it's a source of intrinsic value. I construct a couple of thought experiments to show otherwise. Yeah, see, this is what I was thinking about. They might have some arguments. They want to show that there is something not so great about being in a state of nature, whatever that might be. I argue that the only kind of value naturalness possesses is extrinsic. More specifically, naturalness derives a kind of counterfactual value from our epistemic limitations. Natural states of affairs are good relative to non-natural states of affairs produced by botched interventions. Of course, this sort of value is contingent upon our state of knowledge, and thus it dissipates when we know enough to intervene intelligently. Yeah, see, if we had God's eye view, then we could, perform miracles for animals, and they would be happier. But that would require God's eye view, which we don't get to have, unless this person thinks they're God. And this is what I was talking about earlier, when, who was it? Like one of the, was it Megalomorph? Was saying, yeah, we don't know how to do it. This is what I was trying to say earlier, is that I don't think it's a question so much of knowledge. I think it's something that might even be beyond what our science can tell us. And so it's not a question of like, if we just had more time and effort to research. I don't know if it's a question of time and effort. Like the natural world is very complicated, and it might be so complicated that like we might learn something, but we might not know enough to actually fix stuff. Okay. In the next 2 chapters, I defend the claim that we have a collective duty to research and then cautiously provide large-scale assistance to wild animals. Unlike duties of care, duties of beneficence are not contingent upon the presence of special relationships. Though we don't owe wild animals the same care we owe domesticated animals, that doesn't mean we don't have a collective duty to aid them. This duty is, of course, constrained in various ways. We shouldn't deprive competent animals of their liberty, since doing so is impermissibly paternalistic. I mean, again, we're assuming a lot about agency, animals, and liberty. And when beneficent intervention is very costly for the intervener, then it isn't obligatory. Within these constraints, however, there is still considerable room for obligatory beneficence. Since most individuals are strategists, and thus most individual wild animals lack the competence needed to survive, coercive intervention is, if necessary, justified in their case. What's more, some interventions, such as vaccinating wild animals against disease via feeding stations or baits, doesn't involve coercion at all. I feel like this person has no idea how evolution works. Like, none. Evolution does not give a fuck about us. Evolution really, I can't even stress how little it gives a fuck about us. Anything we would do, this is like, it would react to it, and in ways we cannot even imagine. If we put our medicines out into nature, we're going to make such super bugs that we will be so sad. So sad. Like, that would just be unbelievably terrible. The idea of vaccinating, unless we could eliminate some terrible diseases, fully eliminate, I don't want to put our medicines out there because we're already hitting walls with the effectiveness of some of our medicines. Holy shit, I think this is terrible. Nor must intervention be especially costly for anyone. Gene editing, a means of intervention I advocate in my book, would involve some initial research costs, but it doesn't require any maintenance, nor would any single person have to shoulder those costs. The obligation to intervene is a collective one, and thus the cost of intervention would be paid for via taxation or some other institutional mechanism. Alright, I have no idea how you think gene editing is going to save anything, but yeah. I mean, if there's a way to do it, let's do it. I mean, if there's a way to, make new medicines, I should say, let's do it. But, I don't understand how you think we're just not going to create super bugs unless we completely wipe out, a terrible disease. If we wipe out malaria, that's great. But, we're not wiping out malaria. It's going to be really hard. A major issue with respect... I mean, obviously, Shane, the idea that we could even get our shit together for ourselves This is well off into the future. Yeah. Yeah, like... But I mean, this is still philosophy. You're allowed to, like, dream big, you know? This person's dreaming big. That's how it goes. A major issue with respect to intervention is whether, and if so, how carefully we should avoid ecological damage. How careful should we do not to ruin the world? I don't know. Maybe just a little bit careful? On one view, we should actually intend to cause ecological damage. Since the total level of well-being in nature is allegedly net negative, we should prevent wild animals from reproducing by intentionally destroying their habitats. Yeah. Like, oh, that's a good point. I wasn't thinking about that. It's like which animals get to live. And bacteria don't seem to... Yeah, I wasn't thinking that way. You know, who are we to say that the bacteria don't deserve to live? And stuff like that. So... It's like, yeah, and who's thinking about the bacterial lives? Maybe their suffering is, like, terrible, and there's way more of those than any, you know, vertebrate. So, on another view, we should be exceedingly paralyzingly careful, as our knowledge of ecosystems is too poor for us to accurately determine what harms we may be risking or what their probabilities are. In reply, I argue that even if we assume that most R strategist offspring live net negative lives and that the level of well-being in nature is consequently net negative, from a deontological perspective, we should never destroy habitat intentionally. Yeah, well, that's fair. Shane says, when a paramecium tries to eat a bacteria, the bacteria tries to get away. Seems like it doesn't want to die. Yeah. You know, of course, there's people who will say, well, there's no pain felt at that. It's just some sort of a mechanistic reaction. But again, like I was saying earlier, we need to be more open-minded about these things. We don't know exactly what pain is for all the things. But yeah, like if you were to... This is what I also, one of the things... Although you're right, I did not think about like the bacteria before, but this was what I was saying earlier with that this is a cute baby argument. You want to save all the cute little animals. You're not caring about the paramecium here because they're not cute and you don't really care about their pain. This is all about the animals that, you know, we like, that you show up in kids' books. And like these are the ones that are being talked about in this paper. Because if you were going after, you know, saving bacteria, that doesn't even make sense. Like, it doesn't even make sense that we could go out and save bacteria's lives. I don't even know what that would mean for us to go out into the world and try to, like, make a, you know, an agar, like, you know, those petri dish utopias for, like, you know, bacteria. Like it, I don't even know what to say about that. Like, first of all, if we tried to save some of them, that would kill a bunch of other ones, and we'd all die because our intestines would just get ruined. Perry the paramecium. I'm sure, like, there's a whole bunch of nerdy people out there that would buy it. Okay. And so I'm just finding this, like, this is sort of a fun paper. A fun book, I guess, but, like, it's just funny to me. After all, it's impermissible to intentionally kill existing net positive animals. Most R strategist parents. I mean, how do you know the parents are happy about their kids? They may hate them. For the sake of preventing future net negative animals from being born, most R strategist offspring. Yeah, so once it gets to be an adult, you can't kill them to prevent all their offspring. Why not? Well, that's deontologically bad. However, I also argue that we shouldn't let our epistemic limitations prevent us from acting at all. The possibility that unintended ecological damage would have a net positive outcome, particularly if it lowers our strategist populations, counts in favor of being less risk-averse. Furthermore, I argue that we shouldn't be too concerned about unforeseeable risks, since harms caused unintentionally and unforeseeably are excusable in circumstances where action is needed to prevent death and/or significant suffering from occurring. What the fuck is a net positive animal? I think they're talking actually of a, you know, animals that have good lives. Animals that sort of like being alive or they enjoy their lives. And that'd be the animals that are able to have kids are having a good life. Is basically, that's the net positive animal. Because, again, this is the, you know, anthropomorphic version of things. If you're a parent, you're happy here. And that's, what the author is taking as a net positive. that if you're a parent, you're happy with being alive or being a parent. So that's what they think. But again, it's the very anthropomorphic version of like the cute animals, and the parent animals are the ones we like. Okay. In Chapter 5, I discussed the merits of using gene editing to assist wild animals. I focus in particular on a relatively new form of editing called CRISPR. CRISPR is far cheaper than earlier forms of gene editing. CRISPR is amazing, by the way, and it can be used to spread beneficial traits through wild populations via gene drive, a technique that can increase a trait's inheritability to the extent that nearly all of an edited organism's descendants will inherit it. So we're basically going to make like genetically modified animals. That's great. Gotcha. We're going to kill the infirm. We've circled back to Kant for animals. Old Emmanuel had a farm. Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right. We're getting back to just kill the weak. Since editing a population, this is just scary to me that we think we're going to edit genes in a safe way and then release it into the wild. Like, you want zombies? This is how you get zombies. And this isn't even like the idea that like this is how you get zombies is a joke. The idea that if you're gonna spread a single gene throughout a population, you also create a single fault point in that entire population. That's exactly juggling. And like that, like the idea that like we're gonna make the cockroaches better, like more powerful. The cockroaches don't need our help, man. They don't need our help. They should call the efforts to edit the genes of vegetables salad CRISPR. Yes. Haha, megalomorph. CRISPR is a fantastic technology. It makes gene editing so much easier. What used to be super expensive and, like only a few labs could do like gene editing. CRISPR is really, making it much more available. You get yourself banned. I've never banned anyone here. Actually, that's not true. I had people come in here and call me a Nazi, and I banned them a while back. I don't even know if I did ban them. I tried to ban them. I didn't know how. I may have only timed them out. This is just like... The idea that we have any idea what the fuck we're doing is like... This is crazy to me. Okay. Since editing a population in this way only requires releasing a proportionally small number of edited organisms into a wild, only a tiny fraction of the target population need ever be experimented upon or otherwise operated upon. And though the harms of genetic experimentation should be taken seriously, they can also be mitigated by incorporating a capacity building phase in which only animals who are incapable of suffering are involved in initial experiments. Yeah, sure. In the last section of Chapter 5, I compare a number of goals that gene editing could be used to try to achieve. On the one hand, it's clear that an ideal ecosystem is one where all animals have a significant opportunity to live flourishing lives. For this ideal to be achieved, it's necessary that animal parents devote considerable energy to each offspring born, and that animals not be preying upon one another. Yeah, this person wants to make the Garden of Eden. That's like literally what's going on here. They're making a place where nothing is fighting. The upshot, it would seem, is that we should seek to modify animals' reproductive and dietary behavior. We're not going to have animals anymore. That's what they're saying. God. This is like, what's that movie? Attack of the Pod People? Like, that's what we have here. Like, where like an alien force comes in, takes over our minds, and we all stop fighting, but it's because we've all been taken over. This person just wants to go edit their genes and make them not fight anymore. Well, congratulations, but, like, that's, like, the alien invasion of, like, Pod People, whatever it was, that old movie. On the other hand, I acknowledge that behavioral change may turn out to be infeasible to safely achieve, or that may turn out to be feasible and safe only in invasion of the biosnatchers, thank you, in some ecosystem. In light of this uncertainty, I argue that genetic painkillers are a second best option where the researching of particular interest is definitely reducing the extent to which our strategist pain bothers them, dulling the effect of dimension of their pain for the first few weeks of their life or so, the period where they're most vulnerable and most likely to die painfully. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to give everyone, like, brain drugs, where everyone's going to be hopped up on, like, antidepressants and, like, painkillers. I want this person to just make like a second Earth and like let the animals just run wild on that for a while. Like, this is. In the final chapter, I discuss a number of issues concerning animal rights advocacy. Since our collective obligation to assist wild animals is not currently being satisfied, advocacy is needed to bring about a political change and to create an assistance program. Following Peter Singer, I argue that we have a personal duty to devote some of our resources to beneficence-related causes. However, I also argue from a deontological perspective, duties of beneficence end when the cost of beneficence become significant. Though assisting others at great cost to oneself is certainly praiseworthy, it is not obligatory. Yeah, exactly. So, this is the most consequentialist deontologist I've ever seen anyone. They're basically making a lot of consequentialist arguments in a deontological way. So it's like they're saying, look at all this suffering. We've added it up. It's terrible. We should do something about that. But let's give a deontological argument to that effect. Establishing that we have a personal duty to devote some of our resources to beneficence isn't enough to establish that resources should be devoted to addressing wild animal suffering, since other cause areas compete with it. Animal advocates in particular might reasonably worry that devoting resources to wild animal suffering diverts resources away from traditional animal rights cause areas such as animal agriculture. However, I argue that the tension between addressing wild animal suffering and addressing traditional cause areas is far less stark than it seems. Convincing others that sentient animals are our moral equals and that we should change many of our practices out of respect for animals' moral status, that we should go vegan, for example, helps to foster beliefs and attitudes that make people far more likely to care about wild animal suffering when confronted with it. As a result, direct work on traditional causes often indirectly addresses wild animal suffering. Still, since wild animal suffering is an exceedingly neglected area, I do think that some people should work on it directly. They shouldn't be advocating for anything too dramatic right now, though, for example, they probably shouldn't advocate for genetic editing. Yeah, that's fucking nuts, my friend. Like, really, knucking futs. Efforts to raise awareness about the scale of wild animal suffering and to build support for familiar, less ambitious interventions such as vaccinating wild animals or reducing parasite populations are more likely to be successful. Again, who's to say the life of the parasite doesn't matter? What about the parasite suffering? Author, due to the specific beliefs in the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, specifically that life is pain, all believers in the faith should be forced to convert. Yeah. See, this is what I meant when I said earlier that this is giving me the very strongly like anti-abortion argument stuff. This is coming from a very, very like Western centric. I feel like it's a very Western centric viewpoint of how the world is set up. It's like, well, the parasites clearly don't. Their lives don't matter. Other lives do. The wild animals that are cute, or the wild animals that are like, sentient in some way, but not the parasites. Those lives don't matter. And so it's like, this is the old, like, which lives matter, or you get to pick. And so it's like, yes, this is a very, I don't like this viewpoint. It's like, this is the whole point of the conservative is like, some lives matter, some lives don't. And like, we have to choose and protect the ones that we like. It's like, it's creepy. And you think you know what matters in this world, and you don't. You really don't. So, No Lives Matter, Cthulhu 2024. Yeah, this is the problem. This is the cute animals' lives matter. And I don't really like that viewpoint, and I just find it very, arrogant. Juggling says, I always feel this line of thinking, save the cute animals, is well-meaning at first, but then devolves into being a traitor to your own species because of emotionally based bias. Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't fault people like this for wanting to do well in the world, and you want to protect the things you understand in some sense, which are the cute animals. But it just seems like it's an unsophisticated view, and you're just fucking it up. It always happens. Like, no one gets this right. So, it's like, yeah, you want to go like, and a lot of people, want to go like create an animal rescue. That's amazing and it's good. But like, if you're talking about, this person isn't talking about, going to set up like an animal rescue. Go right ahead. This person's talking about like gene editing out in the wild, changing massive things about like the way the world like functions. Like, oh, we see a new disease, we have to go like protect the animals against it, not evolution. And it's like, this is like fundamentally just changing the structure of like how nature operates. So it's like, I have nothing against people who want to like save the cute animals, but like when you're saving the cute animals at a global scale, you're killing everything else. Okay. Yes, such efforts also help to create the conditions needed for more ambitious advocacy to be effective in the future. Once much of the world sees sentient animals as our moral equals, again, who's getting to decide what is the cute animal here? They're calling it sentient animals. I have no fucking clue how you actually decide which animals are the ones that need to be saved. Has gone vegan, is aware of the scale of the wild animal suffering, and accepts that we have a duty to intervene. Much of it will also be open to ambitious interventions such as delivering genetic painkillers to our strategist infants. Yeah, this is a very ambitious. This is a very ambitious program. It's like, you think you can like perfectly allow for, no suffering in the beginning of a life of these animals, and then somehow the ones that live are going to be fine, and the ones that die won't ever know that they were in trouble. Yeah, like the amount of genetic engineering. I don't think this person appreciates, like, yes, you can do some genetic engineering. The amount of genetic engineering required to like modify animals to have a perfectly functioning system outside of the first few weeks of their life where they potentially die, and that wouldn't fuck with them as they were like growing up, like, is, I feel like, a gross I can't speak anymore. Simplification of what's happening in nature, and gross simplification doesn't cover it. It's like no fucking clue at all what the hell is going on in like the world. Megalomorph says, wanting to eliminate all suffering reminds me of the medieval Christians who would murder all their children as soon as they were baptized so that they would go to heaven and avoid all suffering. Yeah, like it's that level of delusion. I completely agree. Like, that's the level of like delusion I'm seeing here. That like, do you have any idea how difficult, like this? I feel like this person has no idea the level of genetic engineering required. And if we were at that level of genetic engineering required, we could basically like terraform Mars or something and just be like good to go. Author, since Sasquatch are clearly harassed by logging companies and hikers, their native habitats should be preserved. All existing Sasquatch should be genetically modified to be super fertile so their populations can rebound. Yeah, I mean, this is why it's like, it's weird. Like, it's not even like it's like this is realistic. It's not realistic. It's strange. It's like, okay, we have to go clone a bunch of animals and, do something to them that they won't worry about humans. And like, okay, and it's like, and then it's like they're not gonna be the same things anymore. They're gonna be something else. It's like, how much genetic engineering can we do until like they stop being what they were? And then like, as soon as nature changes, we have to like go out and do this again and again and again and again and again and again. It's like, this is playing God in bites. Like, this is you're literally changing one gene here, changing another one there, and it's like this is like God of nudges. Like, you're just nudging the animals around as we need to make us feel better about ourselves, I guess. Yeesh. Okay. But I'm losing my mind here. I can't speak and I can't think anymore. So, let us get at it.